Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. Hopefully, you had a great holiday and are ready for another great holiday this week. Always an interesting time on the calendar. To wit, it's the only live show I have this week. Between games and holidays and everything else. So we got a lot to accomplish. Appreciate you being here, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It absolutely will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics because, well, it will be, and I'll explain further momentarily. I would love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. That's where you could call or text. Now, there is a popular trope in this medium around this time of year, and it's to look back. To look back at the year it was with 2026 right around the corner and figure out what the biggest stories of the year are. And I'm not big into bits. If you've listened to the show, I don't do some of that kind of stuff. I don't knock people who do. It's just not my style. If this is a bit, this is the closest thing I get to one. Because I am interested in looking back at what was an incredibly eventful. I was walking through it today, just thinking about everything that happened just on a local level, right? Because that's what we're here to do more than anything else, is discuss sports at a local level. Just in this state, think about the number of significant things that happened in the sports calendar of the year 2025. So I have some of the biggest stories. I have the three biggest stories of the year, and then some others, honorable mentions, if you will. And you can help steer the conversation if you so choose, again, at 719-247-1313. I think you have to start, in whether I was looking back on the year or not, I would have started with what happened on Christmas at Arrowhead Stadium. But it actually feeds perfectly into what I'm doing today, because there is no doubt that the year 2025 in Colorado sports is about the Denver Broncos. It's not only about the Denver Broncos, but to say that anything topped the Denver Broncos returning to prominence. Because don't forget, they clinched their first playoff spot since 2015 last year, or last season, right? In the year 2025. So really, we have the Broncos returning to the playoffs and the Broncos winning the AFC West within the same calendar year. But that's the biggest story in Colorado sports this year, is the Denver Broncos getting back to where they had been accustomed to being for so many years, but yet had missed out on that for so many years. It's weird because the Broncos, their history is what it's been, right? The John Elway years. Then they went through the low point, and then it was the Peyton Manning years, and now we're into the Sean Payton era, if you will. But for this franchise that is still looked at as one of the NFL's best, to be devoid of just the playoffs for the better part of a decade, is shocking enough, but the fact that they haven't been able to win the division in a decade. Now, it's not surprising when you factor in the team that's been winning the division. But for the Broncos to end two droughts in the span of a calendar year, the playoff drought and the division drought, to me makes it the biggest story of the year. What Sean Payton has been able to do in a relatively short time, it's pretty remarkable. Even if you aren't a believer in the Denver Broncos when the playoffs roll around. And we'll have that conversation today. But even if you're not buying them as Super Bowl contenders, just think about where this franchise has been. Both in terms of their own issues, right? Cycling through quarterbacks and head coaches like nobody's business. And missing out on the playoffs year after year after year, and also being under the thumb of the NFL's next dynasty after the Patriots. Right? And I think it exacerbated the despair that I think Broncos fans have been feeling throughout most of this decade, is that not only are you not good enough to be in the playoffs or good enough to win your division, you have a dynasty sitting at the top of that division. You can't even AFC South, or to be fair, this year, NFC South, this team. Like, you didn't even, if you're a Broncos fan, you didn't even have hope that you could be 9-7 or even 10 wins and conceivably win a division. You couldn't even hope for the division to be down. And I suppose in some ways the AFC West is, as a byproduct of where Kansas City is right now, but the Chargers are getting in the playoffs. And the Broncos did go through Kansas City. Right? They beat them twice. I know what they were on Christmas. Trust me, we'll get into that as the show progresses. But when's the last time I told you on right before Christmas how long it's been since the Broncos have won at Arrowhead? I mean, when's the last time that the Denver Broncos swept Kansas City in whatever form Kansas City took? So, yes, there is that satisfaction of beating Kansas City twice, no matter what form they're in. But I remember talking about this at the beginning of the year, because there was a lot of conversation on whether Denver could topple the Chiefs dynasty by winning the AFC West. And I remember what I said then. Winning the division is not, I mean, beating Kansas City is part of it. But to me, and this is where I had my questions about this Denver Broncos team, I could see them beating Kansas City at least once this season. In fact, that was one of the games I picked at the beginning of the season for the Broncos to win, was at home against Kansas City. But even 2 games against the Kansas City Chiefs does not a division winner make. There's so many other games that the Denver Broncos would have to win in order to take down a Kansas City team or win a division that really, to win it, you got to have no fewer than like 11 wins. That's where my question with this Denver Broncos team was to start the year. It wasn't about beating Kansas City. It was about everybody else on their schedule. How many wins were available to this Denver Broncos team outside of their division? And they did both. Yeah, they knocked off the defending division champions for umpteen years by beating them head-to-head twice. But the fact that the Denver Broncos are in a situation where they could finish not only as the champions of the AFC West, which they already are, but be the top overall seed in the AFC. That's how many games the Denver Broncos have won or could win, barring Sunday's result. Getting to 11, 12, 13 wins, even by beating Kansas City, I thought was far-fetched for the Denver Broncos. And it makes it all the more impressive what Sean Payton has done in just a few years. And you think about, it hasn't been a completely radical transformation of this team. There was the bloodletting early, right? Some of the guys that have been fan favorites, Justin Simmons is the poster child for this. Guys who have been good, guys who have been good in the community, fan favorites, shown the front door, because in Sean Payton's mind, that's either not where their assets should be allocated, or there's a better option, or there's a better fit, or there's one of quote unquote my guys. So that happened initially, right? And coinciding with that was him pressing upon George Payton, or them being of like mind, to say, hey, we got to build up the trenches. So it was fortifying the most important spot on the field, right? Where so many games are won and lost, the trenches, fortifying that while getting rid of, with all due respect to those who contributed to this, the stench of the last few Broncos teams. Right? And bringing in guys that know what to expect from Sean Payton and know that is incredibly high standard and know how to meet it. And then the biggest change, obviously, was getting rid of Russell Wilson. A move that we had never seen. We had never seen a team just be okay with paying that quarterback or any player that much money to go away. But that's how locked into the vision Sean Payton was. He said, Russell Wilson, I bet he figured this out 5 minutes in. This is not my guy. This is not the type of quarterback that I can win with. And then he goes out and gets Bo Nix. All of these moves along the way raised eyebrows, drew criticism. But it was all about a very specific vision that Sean Payton had for what he wanted. Maybe it's not what people would consider the best way of going about it, right? We've talked about Bo Nix's limitations as a quarterback. We've talked about the skill positions. as well. The Broncos, make no mistake about it, are not the most talented team that's getting ready to play in this postseason. But what Sean Payton has on his roster is talent. They're not devoid of talent, but also guys that match his vision. And what you saw on Saturday, I suppose, because it was a little anticlimactic the way that the Broncos won their division. But when Houston beat LA, that was another benchmark in this vision of Sean Payton being realized. And in true Sean Payton fashion, the guy doesn't even seem to care.
We actually didn't even talk about it. And I don't know if that's something I should have or omitted. I haven't seen the hats or the shirts. My understanding is they're pretty ugly, and we just didn't really talk about it.
Typical Sean Payton. Any chance to immediately shift the focus to the next thing. That's part of what Sean Payton has brought to the Denver Broncos. He's been talking all year about the importance. Heck, after the Buffalo game, he was already laying the groundwork for these matchups against Kansas City, taking shots almost at Kansas City, saying, if we were to have gotten past this game, we would have beaten you. And he stressed the importance of winning the division over and over and over again. And then he attains it. And then it's like it's the least consequential thing that he has ever achieved. But it's partly who Sean Payton is, right? It's always on to the next thing. It's always on to bigger and better things. But it's also the bit that he does. And part of that bit, too, is maybe taking some digs, taking some shots, which is part of the reason why Sean Payton's building of the Denver Broncos has been met with some doubt, some criticism, is that Sean Payton perhaps hasn't done this in the cleanest way possible. I don't mean we're not going back to what he got in trouble for in New Orleans. I'm just saying he took shots at Nathaniel Hackett. He's taken shots at the Chiefs. He's taken shots at Russell Wilson. You could second guess the way they handled Russell Wilson till the end of time, and I don't think they handled it correctly. They didn't handle it with the most sympathy. So that's part of this, too, is that Sean Payton is quite unapologetic about the way he does things. And what team could he possibly be taking a shot at? During the break, go check out if you're able to, not if you're driving, pull up the New England Patriots Twitter account, if you will. In most people's approximation, the biggest threat to Denver getting out of the AFC, or at least a team that I feel like a good number of people are leaning towards rather than Denver. Go look at how they celebrated a division title. Tell me if you think the Patriots think that the division champion gear is ugly. But this just all goes into what the last 3 years of Sean Payton have been. A very clear and focused direction for the Denver Broncos, whether you like it or not. A lot of these moves, they make sense for Sean Payton. They may not be what you think the best moves are, but they make sense for Sean Payton. And every so often along the way, it's a little bit of defiance. It's rubbing people the wrong way, whether it's his own fan base, whether it's veterans on his team, whether it's his colleagues inside the NFL, whether it's people in the media. But when Sean Payton came back from that year hiatus and being on Fox, he came back with a clear goal. Wherever I end up, I'm going to do it exactly the way I want to do. And let's not forget Greg Penner and Kerry Penner's role in all of this. And the upheaval that has permeated throughout the Broncos front office for decades. The highest office in the front office. But with the Penners able to lure Sean Payton to Denver and allowing him to do things his way, even if it rubs people the wrong way, even if it costs them a few $100,000 to resod the field or to build a new. They're doing everything that Sean Payton wants them to do. He has complete control to do things his way. And on Saturday, once the Houston Texans defeated the LA Chargers, it was the biggest step in Sean Payton's rebuild of the Denver Broncos. And a lot of this stuff contributed to it. There was a specific way he did it. And the ugly gear that's available to buy on Fanatics says it worked. 719-247-1313. Just getting going with this Monday edition of Drive Time Sports. A little bit in the now, a little bit looking back. In fact, I'd like to blend the two of those things together when I get to what, to me, outside the Denver Broncos, was the biggest story of the sports year. I'd be curious if anybody has purchased any Broncos divisional champion shirts or hats. And would you now, if you were thinking about it, did Sean Payton talk you out of it when he called them ugly? Now, you have to know he was just taking a shot at New England, most likely, because they posed for it. They celebrated. It's kind of that age-old, when baseball teams, do you pop champagne when you win a division? Do you pop champagne when you win your first-round playoff series? Sean Payton's trying to instill that mentality, and usually it's based on entirely the team and their lineage, if you will. I remember one of the latest and most argued champagne popping was the Yankees. Right? The New York Yankees, who, by the way, hadn't won a World Series since 2009, go to the World Series a couple years ago. Pop champagne to celebrate the occasion, and they were getting killed. You're the Yankees. Act like the Yankees. Yankees don't pop champagne until they win it all. Where would the Broncos be? I know where Sean Payton's mentality is. He's trying. That's the thing about the Barbs, the kind of subconscious things that Sean Payton does. Not subconscious, but you know what I mean. Like, it usually has a dual purpose. One, I think this is the more important thing. He's sending a message to his team. Right? This is the new version of we're going to play in bigger games. The idea that the Broncos don't care that they won the AFC West is nonsense. The idea that Sean Payton doesn't care is nonsense. But it's just like when they beat Kansas City the first time. Oh, we'll play bigger games. They beat Green Bay. Oh, we'll play bigger games. Doesn't mean that game wasn't the biggest thing that the Broncos had going for them. But it's Sean Payton continuously dangling that carrot and say there's more here that you can have. I think that's the most important thing, and that's his main goal, is to keep this Broncos team striving, to never act like they've made it and that mission's accomplished. But it's also, hey, not only am I saying that it's unbecoming of my team to embrace a division title, now look around the league and see who is celebrating their division titles and laugh at them because they're wearing that ugly gear. So it's two things with Sean Payton calling the gear ugly. Although he has some people that are agreeing with him. This from the 719. The gear is ugly because it's orange and blue and has a terrible logo on it. I don't think that's why Sean Payton thinks it's ugly. I'm just guessing. I don't think he has a problem with the Broncos colors or logo. But that could be why you think it is. But I would be curious. I had this conversation with somebody earlier today. At what stage of your team's accomplishments, like what accomplishment do they have to get you to log on to Fanatics and buy something? Now, there's a chance that the Denver Broncos have been devoid of a division title for a decade. They win this, and this is the biggest thing they win this year. Are you going to say, I'm buying it now because this is the biggest accomplishment for my football team in a decade? Or are you waiting and saying, I'm going to hold off and see if they get to a Super Bowl, and then I'm going to ask the question again? Do you buy gear, that AFC champion gear? I'd be curious your thoughts. It doesn't have to be the Denver Broncos. It could be your team. At what point do you say this is an accomplishment worthy of my $50 to immortalize it, to add it to my collection? Is it a division title when you haven't had one in 10 years? Or because it's the Denver Broncos? And because you are of a certain age to see the Broncos accomplish bigger and better things than winning the AFC West, you're like, nah, they got to get to a Super Bowl before I'm buying gear. Or they got to win a Super Bowl. This is not a plug for fanatics, but you can buy division championship stuff just like you could buy playoff stuff last year. We'll get back into the Denver Broncos here in a little bit. Actually, I'm up against it, so I'll take another break. I want to come back, looking back at the biggest stories of the year. I have 3 that I think are the biggest stories in Colorado sports. Already talked about one, the Denver Broncos getting back to the postseason and back on top of the AFC West after a decade. To me, is the biggest story of the year. I'll tell you what the second biggest sports story in Colorado is right after this on Extra Sports 1300. Broncos win the AFC West for the first time in a decade. And the most pressing question, of course, you buying the gear? Sean Payton says it's ugly. But do you do everything? If Sean Payton told you to jump off a bridge, would you? You're your own person. Are you buying the gear? This coming in from the 719. When I was a kid, I wanted all the gear. I mean, division champion, Super Bowl champion, conference champion, all the gear. Now you got to wait. Division means nothing. Interesting way to end your text. Division means nothing. Division means nothing in terms of purchasing choices? Or are you expressing something deeper here about what the Denver Broncos have and have not accomplished? Because that's where I would like to take the conversation. Now that the Broncos are division champions, is the rest house money? For your level of satisfaction as a fan, is this enough? They should be the number one seed. Tell you what the Chargers are and are not doing, or more accurately, who is and is not playing on Sunday to help illustrate my point. But barring an absolutely catastrophic collapse, the Denver Broncos are going to have the AFC run through Denver. It's okay to say that the division is an accomplishment, because it is. And again, it's not about just beating Kansas City twice. In fact, if you put it there and say that's the big, beating Chris Oladokun is the biggest accomplishment, no. To me, it's about the potentially 11 other wins that they'll have this year. And not even any particular one, just the fact that they have that many. That's what winning a division is about. Yeah, you can really help yourself out by winning games in the division. And if you don't win your games in the division, then the chances are very high you won't win your division. But what I doubted about the Denver Broncos going into the year was that they were capable, with the schedule they had laid in front of them, of winning 12 or 13 games. It wasn't the two matchups with Kansas City only, or even games against the AFC West only. It was about the entirety of their schedule and being able to navigate it to get home field. And they did that, and that's an accomplishment, and they deserve credit for that. But now, is there something more that you expect? Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. So the Broncos and what they have accomplished in the last calendar year is, to me, the biggest story in Colorado sports in the year 2025. Number 2 on that list is, well, I'll let Chris McFarland, general manager of the Colorado Avalanche, tell you what the second biggest story of the year was.
It's a bittersweet day, right? That Mikko is a decorated player for us. He's an elite winger in this league, and so it was a tough few days, but we just felt the timing was right. And when the the last few days it kind of came together, and we decided to act yesterday, but it wasn't without a lot of serious thought. I can assure you of that.
Quite simply, one of the most shocking trades in Colorado sports history, if not hockey history, and if not sports history. That's how seismic of a move it was for the Colorado Avalanche to trade Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes. And it was the biggest move in a series of moves that Chris McFarland made, with the end result or the end goal being a less top-heavy, deeper, more well-rounded hockey team. It wasn't about what Mikko Rantanen was or was not. It was about what this roster for the Avalanche was and was not. And Chris McFarland felt like the depth of this team was lacking to the point that it was keeping them from achieving the ultimate prize again, which was winning a Stanley Cup. And the move started, obviously, with the reshaping of the goaltender room with Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood. Not in that order. Wedgwood was first, then Blackwood was brought in. But it was the Mikko Rantanen trade, and then shortly thereafter, it was acquiring Brock Nelson. And even this offseason, one of the Avs didn't do a whole lot other than lock up their own players, which there's value in that. But even, moving on from Miles Wood and Charlie Coyle and getting Gavin Brindley. And with the cap savings, going out and getting a Victor Olofsson. Now, I'm not saying all of these moves are created equal. In fact, I'm telling you, the Mikko Rantanen trade is second to only the Broncos getting back on top of the division in terms of significance in the year 2025. But it was an absolutely shocking move. And in a weird twist of fate that Chris McFarland could not have foreseen, Mikko Rantanen ended up back in the Central Division, and he ended up almost single-handedly eliminating the Colorado Avalanche from the postseason. The series he had against Colorado put even more heat, more pressure on Chris McFarland and Jared Bednar and this Avs team to deliver this year. And like the Denver Broncos, the job is far from finished when it comes to the Colorado Avalanche. But what they have become this year, even without Mikko Rantanen, is a team on a historic pace and a team that rarely loses. Beating them in 60 minutes is almost foolish. You got teams right now saying if we could just get them to overtime. Beating this team in 60 minutes has proven a near impossibility this year. Exhibit A, just 2 days ago, the Colorado Avalanche, with perhaps their best example of what they have become post Mikko Rantanen, trailing by 2 goals twice in Vegas, getting goalied by Carter Hart. Vegas likens themselves a Stanley Cup contender as well. And the Avs came back from 2 goals down twice. The Vegas Golden Knights, one of The 5 best teams in the NHL, 5, 6 best teams in the NHL had the Avs dead to rights in their own building and couldn't put this team away in 60 minutes. I can think of no better example from the first part, even going back to the way this team looked after the Mikko Rantanen trade. I can't think of a better example of what the Avs have become, despite giving away one of their best players in franchise history. It's a crowded field, but Mikko Rantanen's somewhere on that list. The fact that a fellow Stanley Cup contender had everything going for them and had this team in Vegas down by 2, and they still couldn't close them out in regulation. And they ended up losing the game, by the way. Not that, I mean, I got to be consistent here. I don't care about what happens in a shootout, and I don't care about what happens in overtime, because that's not real. 3-on-3 overtime is not real overtime, and the shootout is a shootout. I don't care. I'm focused on the 60-minute result, and the 60-minute result was Vegas had the Avs right where they wanted them, and the Avalanche once again show that even without their best performance for 60 minutes, no deficit is insurmountable. Here's Jared Bednar after the game.
It wasn't a perfect game from us, that's for sure, but we kept fighting, and guys played with a lot of heart. And whenever you're down against a good team twice by 2 and you're able to come out of there with a win, I think it feels good, but it's clearly some things we got to clean up moving forward here.
And you want to talk about keeping the standard up here. Talked about that with Sean Payton, completely dismissing the fact that they won the division for the first time in 10 years. There's Jared Bednar, one of the best wins of the year for the Colorado Avalanche, showing how much of a wagon they are when they turn it on. And Jared Bednar's more focused on where they can get better. The standard with this team is incredibly high. And in getting beat by 2 goals against Vegas would not be up to that standard. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here with this story, because it's not just the trading of Mikko Rantanen. There's a sub-headline about the Colorado Avalanche in 2025, which speaks to, I think, part of the reason why the Avs weren't going to just sit idly by and let the Vegas Golden Knights beat them by multiple goals. It's the return of Gabriel Landeskog. If you wanted to set it alone as its own story, I'll put it 4th on my list. I'll get to the 3rd story coming up here in a little bit. But if you want to combine it with the Avs, because Gabriel, that's part of the Avs calculus here. It's part of why the Avs did what they did. Because they were getting Gabriel Landeskog back. And the Gabriel Landeskog that they have gotten back is better than anybody could have possibly imagined he'd be. The guy hadn't played since the Stanley Cup final against Tampa. And he came back and was an immediate impact player for the Avalanche in the postseason. And you could talk about Gabriel Landeskog's numbers. They're certainly better of late than they were early in the season. But I think the biggest thing that Gabriel Landeskog has brought to this team for what has been a full season is that mentality that was on display on Saturday and is on display so many nights so far this season for the Colorado Avalanche. Gabriel Landeskog before the season said something to the effect of, I didn't work my way back. just to participate, just to be back out on the ice. I came back to win a Stanley Cup, to win the thing I won going out. And how could you, if you're an Avalanche player, look down the bench, look to the other side of the ice, see number 92, and immediately think of what he's been through to get back out on the ice, and you decide from there that, just let this one go tonight. It's not our night, guys. You can't. You can't with number 92 on the bench with you, on the ice with you. And that just continues to show itself this year, where the Avalanche just, it's a cliche, but they refuse to lose. You can have them down. They can start off slow. They could end slow. They could not have this or that. Their power play has not been great. It all has not mattered. The will to win with this team, coupled with the ability to win, with the depth, and of course, Makar and McKinnon, it's why this team is on a historic pace. And we'll see what 2026 brings the Colorado Avalanche. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, to the Broncos win on Christmas. Why? They just can't do themselves any favors, and the Chargers won't be doing them any favors on Sunday either. Welcome in hour 2 on this Monday. Appreciate you watching this show on our social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. The handle is the same in all of those places at XTRA Sports 1300. While you're there, like, subscribe, follow, and most importantly, drop a comment because this is an interactive experience. If you are listening to the show and you want to text or call in, that means of communication is available to you as well at 719-247-1313. Denver Broncos needed 2 things to happen this weekend to be crowned AFC West champions for the first time in a decade. Saturday was the other thing. The Houston Texans beating the LA Chargers. But what they had to do was beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas. And that they did. That will go down as another Bronco victory. And it is a Bronco victory emblematic of this Broncos team and how they win games. I feel like it's the, what was the tagline for Survivor? Outlast, outwit, outsmart, outplay. I don't know if that last one is always the case with the Denver Broncos. But man, they can outlast you and they can outsmart you. There was, and I knew this when it was happening, around the goal line, when they lined up in a wildcat, I said there is no way, and I have family members that can vouch for me. We were watching the game on Thursday night, and I said there is no way they are snapping this football. There's no way. And the last person that knew that was Chris Jones. Because Sean Payton, after the game, confirmed exactly what I knew to be the case watching it live.
It's a no-brainer freeze, but it was at a different formation. One we'd never shown. We were going to take the delay game, so we didn't have a play, I don't know why we called it Harrisburg, because it looked like a play we have called Pittsburgh, and no one moves in Harrisburg. I think that's why we just came up with that.
I can't vouch for all the Harrisburg stuff, but I knew it. There's no way that the Denver Broncos, who pride themselves on being the smartest team in the room and Sean Payton being the smartest coach in the room, there is no way they're running a play on 4th down out of the Wildcat. And why this wasn't known by supposedly the best defensive player that the Kansas City Chiefs have is beyond me. Here's Chris Jones trying to explain himself.
I know. Yeah, that could have saved us 4 points. I felt like the guard moved. But yeah, critical situation. I got to be better. I'm going to beat myself up about that one. So close.
And you know what's perfect, not to divert attention away from the Denver Broncos, but it all ties in here. You want to talk about something embodying a season? Chris Jones being the guy that jumps offside on that play is actually chef's kiss, because this season has been littered with Chris Jones mistakes leading to the demise of the Kansas City Chiefs. The biggest being him standing there watching Trevor Lawrence fall to the ground, get back up, and run in for a touchdown. Chris Jones's brain cramps are emblematic of why the Chiefs are where they are, which is completely missing out on the playoffs. And the Broncos getting an opponent to do that is perfect for what this season has been. I know we talk about the NBA that Christmas is their, real opening day or their second opening day, or most people start to pay attention. That's not what what Christmas is for the NFL. But if by chance there were some people who just decided, I will start paying attention to this NFL season today, it would be perfect. It'd be the perfect way to explain the existence of the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs together in the year 2025. The Broncos outsmarting their opponent, or their opponent being dumber than they are. There's a more polite way of saying that, but I'm just going to say it that way. This is what the Broncos' identity is built on. The Denver Broncos are not going to out-talent you. This is not an all-time great team we are seeing week in and week out. But they are incredibly well coached. And especially in the fourth quarter, when the game is on the line, and it's just funny because through the rest of the game, the Broncos are usually the team that makes more mistakes than their opponent. But for some reason, fourth quarter, when it's time to lock in, this team does. And it was the Denver Broncos just standing there, doing nothing, with no intention on running a play, and their opponent throws up all over themselves. Clip that, and that is both the Broncos season and the Chiefs season, if we're being honest about it. And look, because of the way they won, the allegations still aren't getting beat here by the Denver Broncos. The perception is not changing. As I've been saying for a month, that there was nothing realistically that the Broncos were capable of doing or would happen to change the perspective of this team. And Thursday night, with I don't know how many people watching, probably one of the bigger audiences of the NFL season, they saw the Broncos just exist and the opponent make the grave mistake that cost them the game. But out of that, there's no praise being showered on the Denver Broncos. And why should there be? The Kansas City Chiefs were being quarterbacked by a guy that's been on their practice squad for 4 years. This is a team that is not going to the playoffs. That season is over. Winning in that way against that team not going to change hearts and minds. And to me, the biggest thing about that game is not the what the Broncos defense did. I mean, what else is the Broncos defense supposed to do? Like, people say it was the Chiefs led by a third string quarterback or a guy that's been on the practice squad, and that is true. But point out to me the failings of the Broncos defense. I kind of felt like they did their job. right? Kansas City Chiefs didn't score a lot of points. And ultimately, the Broncos did hold them out of the end zone when they needed to. So, yeah, you're not going to pin a gold star on the Denver Broncos defense's chest because they were able to hold down Chris Oladokun, but they did it. They accomplished their job. To me, it's the other side of the football. And I knew that the Broncos offense would have a tougher test than the Broncos defense would. But the Broncos struggled to put up points. To me, they failed to build upon what they did to the Kansas City Chiefs in that first meeting, which is what that game was supposed to be. Sean Payton talked about it as a extension of that last matchup. It looked like the Denver Broncos were seeing the Kansas City Chiefs not just for the first time in a few weeks, but the first time ever. And something that Bo Nix said after the game kind of made my point.
Honestly, it's the exact opposite of what I thought we were going to get. I thought they were going to pressure us like crazy, but you're right. We got a bunch of too high zone the whole game, and they put a lid on top of it, and they make it tough to find explosive plays. So you just got to inch your way down the field. And I think, obviously, the plays we scored on, they were longer drives, a lot of plays. So we just did what we had to do, but that was a good defense.
We did what we had to do. That should be the slogan on the Broncos AFC West champions shirts. Because that's what they've done for the vast majority of the season. Done what they had to do. Hasn't been pretty. Hasn't been awe-inspiring. But it's gotten the job done, and Sean Payton will remind you of this.
Here's the thing. You ready? It doesn't have to be aesthetically pleasing to be effective. I've said that before. And so that's all that's important.
And that's what I've said about the Denver Broncos. They have what you saw on Thursday, down to a science. Right? They have it down to a science. They know exactly who they are. They know what their identity is. They play to that identity far more often than not. Fourth quarter, they'll be the better team. Their opponent will make mistakes. They will not in the most crucial parts of the game. And the Broncos will win. And they'll look around and wonder why nobody is showering them with praise or printing the Super Bowl champion t-shirt or planning the parade. It's the way they play doesn't engender a lot of praise, but it has to make you confident to see what this team does on a week-to-week basis. And now we're 1 week away from the regular season being over. The number of games that have followed, and not every game is going to follow the same script, but we get to the same place. The climax of this movie is the same every time. How repeatable this all is why you, as a Broncos fan, have to feel confident. But it's also the exact same reason why people who look at it without a vested interest in the success of the Denver Broncos and go, yeah, this team's the best in the AFC. It's because we have been so conditioned to Brady and Mahomes, and to a lesser extent, even while we're waiting for either Brady or Mahomes to get to the Super Bowl, we're seeing Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. We're used to these spectacles. And the Broncos aren't that. And kind of it's part of the reason why they're here at this point, isn't it? Isn't the way they play kind of part of the reason why they've gotten to this point, winning a division so quickly based on where they were perceived to be before Sean Payton arrived? Because they're not trying to light up the scoreboard. They're not trying to make it look aesthetically pleasing because they know they want everything to be a rock fight. Everybody wants, I don't know, a lightsaber battle and something spectacular and cinematic, and the Broncos are like, no, I have this rock and I'm going to throw it at your head. It's ugly. But they do it over and over and over again. And it's a weird place to be because I look at this and I say, in this AFC, why can't this team that has repeated this so many times, followed this recipe, this blueprint so many times, and to the tune of being more than likely the top seed in the AFC, why can't they get out of this side of the bracket? Now, I don't want to talk about the NFC because on the NFC side are a bunch of behemoths. I don't know that you would take anyone in the AFC over the top 5 teams in the NFC at this point. Did you see what the Bears and the Niners put on display last night? But we'll get to it there. We got more than a month before the Broncos or anybody in the AFC has to worry about what's waiting for them on the other side of the bracket. For right now, we're talking the AFC. The consistency that this team has shown, the things that they do well that are conducive to winning, the coach that they have, the defense that they have. I don't blame anyone for saying why not the Denver Broncos, but at the same time, I ask why the Denver Broncos. And it's just that what you saw on Christmas, it's been that the whole season. If you're just tuning in, welcome to this year's version of the Denver Broncos. We've been dealing with this for 17 weeks now. It's why you believe in them, but it's also why you don't believe in them. It's a very weird thing going on right now with this football team. I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. If you're looking for week 18 to say, you know what, Ryan, you're right about all of that, but just wait. Week 18, Chargers, a team that the Broncos have struggled with, coming in to Denver with Herbert fully loaded. That's the name of that car movie. And Harbaugh and the like, this is the week that they are going to show they're saving their best for last, their most spectacular performance against a nemesis that has given them trouble. That's what's coming on Sunday. Well, you should direct your complaints to Jim Harbaugh. More on that next here on Extra Sports 1300. The Denver Broncos are AFC West champions. The next item of business is to clinch the number one spot in the AFC and have the road to the Super Bowl go through Denver. Well, Saturday was with the Chargers and Texans game, a little bit of good news, bad news. Or it could potentially be, depending on your outlook on the world. The good news is the Broncos won the AFC West a week early. It won't come down to week 18. But with the Houston Texans beating the LA Chargers, that means the Chargers have 0 to play for week 18. Nothing. And even a sicko like Jim Harbaugh is like, you know what? It's not worth it. Already announcing that Justin Herbert will not play against the Denver Broncos on Sunday. And just by doing that, it tells you exactly what this is going to be on Sunday. This is going to be week 18 against Kansas City last year. Because all Jim Harbaugh has to say is that Justin Herbert's not playing. He has put he hasn't put Justin Herbert through. Justin Herbert has been through Dante's Inferno this season with all the injuries, with his own injuries. The guy gets beat up every single week, and yet he still goes out there. Jim Harbaugh puts him out there, and now this is a game like, yeah, no, not this week. And I don't blame him. The Chargers have nothing to gain by putting their best out there against the Denver Broncos. In fact, they have everything to lose because they somehow have gotten Justin Herbert to the finish line. And they themselves have gotten to the finish line despite missing their 2 tackles, having at one point their entire running back room injured, Justin Herbert with a broken hand. Like, they have limped to the finish, not in their play, although, I mean, Saturday was a really good game. But they will go into the playoffs essentially with a loss in the last game that they care about. But you've gotten here, right? Unfortunately, you can't win the AFC West, but you have your playoff spot. You use it as a bye week, a mini bye week, however you want to phrase it. I don't blame Jim Harbaugh one bit. This is the right call. Now, it's not worth without, a downside to it. Right? And it's the same downside we talk about every team coming off a bye week. Oh, well, they're hot right now, or they're this, or they're that. And now all of that's going to go away because they had a week off. And some of that is valid. The most important thing is health, especially this year in the AFC, where all 7 of these teams, and we got to figure out one more, whether it's going to be Pittsburgh or Baltimore, every single one of these teams, and you can scoff at whatever team's belief you want to, all 7 of these teams believe it can be them. This is a very different world than we have lived in the AFC for the last decade. Heck, the last 3 decades. Any one of these teams believes they can win it. And we could look at the Chargers in the state of affairs with them and the fact that Justin Herbert has no offensive tackles to protect him, and he's banged up. Have you watched Justin Herbert this season? Why can't it be the Chargers? I'll tell you how it can't be the Chargers is if Justin Herbert injures himself more severely playing a game where the Chargers have nothing to gain. Health is the most important thing. Especially when your quarterback is the one that's maybe a little bit more banged up than everybody else. So maybe you're wondering, well, Ryan, why is that? That's good. Broncos already have the AFC West locked up, and they're going to win. They're going to get home field. Maybe, but Sunday becomes all downside. Like, that's what you probably believe is going to happen, but Sunday now presents all the downside is now on Denver's side. If Justin Herbert and the majority of the starters, and look, Jim Harbaugh is not going to play anybody, you're going to have to get out your program on Sunday because you're not going to know any of these guys. It's going to be the same thing as last year against the Chiefs. And that presents only downside for the Denver Broncos. Because if they lose this game and lose out on home field, they will have win 11 in a row and have lost 2 of 3, including 2 games at home, one of which against the Chargers JV team. It would be an incredible example of falling flat on your face right as you're ready to cross the finish line that I can recall in recent NFL history. Now, you saw what happened last year when the Broncos were in the same situation. They dusted the Kansas City Chiefs. It was no problem. And that may very well happen again. But if it doesn't, and they lose to Trey Lance, and they lose out on home field, epic collapse feels like it needs to be more than 3 weeks. A spectacular collapse. That can be just 3 weeks, right? So all the downside has now been shifted to the Denver Broncos. Because Sean Payton has already said it. He said it earlier today. This is a playoff game for the Denver Broncos.
I think the immediate focus shifts towards Monday meeting, which we just had, relative to our approach this week. Normal schedule, Sunday, 12:25 or 2:25 start time. And this game's very much like a playoff game.
Except the opponent that the Denver Broncos are facing would not even sniff the playoffs. And let's say that the Broncos, let's move away from the doomsday scenario. Let's say the Broncos do exactly to the Chargers what they did to the Chiefs 1 week ago. And they clinch home field advantage. They will have beaten Trey Lance, Chris Oladokun, Kenny Pickett, Geno Smith, Marcus Mariota, Davis Mills, Jackson Dart, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, regular season Jalen Hurts, Jake Browning, and Cam Ward. Now, there is a Mahomes in there. There is a Dak Prescott in there. There is a Jordan Love in there. But it gets back to, and this game doesn't help the Broncos all out in this regard. that list of quarterbacks will be brought up, especially with potentially 2 weeks before the Broncos play football again. But therein lies exactly why when I say that I'm not taking the Broncos to come out of the AFC. It's if they go up against a quarterback of a certain level that Marcus Mariota, Kenny Pickett, Chris Oladokun, Trey Lance are not, I think that's going to be their demise. And yet, the games they're winning, they're facing these quarterbacks and they're still winning by 7 points, 3 points, 4 points. Even if you believe in the Denver Broncos, and I get why you do, you have to see it from the other perspective and understand why this may be one of the most doubted number one seeds that we have seen in the NFL. They will be viewed as one of the most vulnerable we've had in years. They will be inevitably a very trendy pick to get upset the minute they come off of that bye week. And part of the reason will be look at the 11-game winning streak, because all you have is time. Got 2 weeks. And they're going to see Marcus Mariota and Kenny Pickett and Chris Oladokun and Trey Lance, and they're going to see a Broncos team squeaking by their words. Those teams led by those quarterbacks, you can understand why if somebody has to be picked as the most vulnerable high seed, it would be Denver. And that's to say nothing of the belief or what have you when it comes to Bo Nix and what level their quarterback is capable of playing at. The quarterbacks they face, like, look, I look at it and I say, it's fine if you don't want to give the Broncos extra credit for beating Chris Oladokun or beating Trey Lance this week or beating, like, nobody felt like the Broncos needed credit for beating Carson Wentz in week 18. Like, I get that. But to me, you got to look at the fact that they rinse and repeat the same formula over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter what level of quarterback they go up against lately, other than Trevor Lawrence. It's like with the Broncos, I don't think either side is right. I think they're more vulnerable than maybe some people around here would like to believe. But at the same time, I think they're deserving of a little bit more credit than they're being given. But I've said that the Broncos' demise ultimately comes at the hands of a quarterback who is either at an elite level, has the capability of playing at an elite level, or just has a really good quarterback day. Because if you're throwing out a mediocre quarterback, you're not beating this team. And that's where you can give the Broncos credit. Trevor Lawrence was exceptional. But therein lies the blueprint. That's why I keep going back to Buffalo. Even though they keep messing around like they did yesterday, this Bills team is goofing off and acting like they don't care at all about the regular season, and maybe they don't. But I still say when they lock in, when they're focused and they have Josh Allen, I'm taking Buffalo. And now you have to consider throwing Jacksonville in the mix. And look at what's happening now with the Houston Texans led by C.J. Stroud. And what if they run up against Justin Herbert? Yeah, it's not Lamar, although it could be. Stay tuned. But maybe it's not Lamar. Maybe it's not Mahomes. It's not Burrow. But there are some quarterbacks that can masquerade as elite quarterbacks from time to time. And the Broncos haven't had a ton of success this season against even the quarterbacks that you would say that about. 719-24-7. 1313. Coming up next, we'll get back into the biggest stories of the year in Colorado sports. We've talked the Broncos, obviously. Talked about the Avalanche trading Mikko Rantanen and what Chris McFarland has turned this team into. A similar story from just down the hall at Ball Arena is our third story that I'll get into next. How good of a sports day was Christmas if you're a Colorado sports fan? In fact, it's almost like it was Christmas. Like if that day happened on another day on the calendar, you would say, man, it feels like Christmas or my birthday. Broncos go into Arrowhead and beat the Kansas City Chiefs, something that they don't normally do. Getting halfway to clinching the AFC West, which they would, thanks to the Houston Texans. And then you had the nightcap. And they almost fit in so well. Right? Sean Payton seeming to complain about how, you know, the Kansas City Chiefs, they just wanted to run the clock. Yeah, you know who else wanted to run the clock? Everybody that was trying to watch the entirety of Broncos Chiefs and as much as they could of the Denver Nuggets and Minnesota Timberwolves. So to that, I say thank you, Kansas City, for having that game plan. In fact, they deviated late in the game. Too many stoppages. Keep it going. But on Christmas night, if you stayed up late, if you were able to, you were treated to the best performance that Nikola Jokic has ever put on in a regular season game. Because I'm with David Adelman on this. It's apples and oranges. You can't talk about, you can't rank a guy's performances or that performance on Christmas and put it against what he did in the playoffs en route to a title. Like, it's just not fair. Here is David Adelman on the eye-popping performance of Nikola Jokic on Christmas night.
I always put them in different categories because playoffs are different. And, you know, a performance in a game 6 or something when someone's game plan for you that many times is always really impressive. But in a regular season game against a team that basically is a playoff opponent that we play, it feels like 25 times a year. This is up there. It's an historic night. And the efficiency, 15 of 21, 4 for 6, 22 of 23, to go along with a 3-to-1 assist ratio and a triple-double is,
56 points, 16 rebounds, and 15 assists. Nikola Jokic scored 18 of those points in overtime, which is the most that any player has ever scored in an overtime ever. Ever. I know we get in the weeds a little bit and we love to bring up these combination of numbers that Nikola Jokic puts up and say, wow, no one's ever done that. Here's an easy one. No other NBA player has scored 18 points in one overtime. That's an easy one. That's not fun with numbers here. But to put up 56, 16, and 15 as efficiently as David Adelman alluded to, that alone would rank in the top 5 for me. What puts it over the top is what David Adelman mentioned in there. And what the significance of Christmas was for the Denver Nuggets. Nikola Jokic did that and leading the Denver Nuggets to a now 3-0 record against the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that has terrorized them for almost 2 years. The Wolves have terrorized the Denver Nuggets. They have been their downfall. They have brought out one of the most embarrassing moments for this Denver Nuggets team as currently constructed when Jamal Murray tossed a heat pack onto the court. That was emblematic of the Timberwolves absolutely living rent-free in the heads of the Denver Nuggets, that they didn't know what else to do than to throw heat packs in the general direction of referees. Nikola Jokic did that, and by extension, the Denver Nuggets did that to a team that they had no answers for 2 years. And now they're 3-0 against this team. And I said it going in to the holiday. The significance of Christmas was either the Timberwolves say, no, you're not done with us yet, or the Denver Nuggets say, we are finally done with you. It's Andy throwing Woody into the toy box. I don't want to play with you anymore. I'm done with you. Anthony Edwards was tossed from that game. I know that. The Denver Nuggets, for the entirety of the game, did not have Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. So, you know, you can go back and forth with Wolves fans if you want. Anthony Edwards played the vast majority of that game and was absolutely brilliant and made you think that, oh, maybe the Wolves aren't done with the Nuggets yet, or vice versa. Maybe the Nuggets do need to figure some more things out against Minnesota. And I'm not saying that this is a sweep or a gentleman's sweep. It's still going to be an incredibly compelling, hard-fought, long series. But the Denver Nuggets putting up these kind of performances against that basketball team is incredibly significant. And why Nikola Jokic, from a statistical standpoint, having one of his best games ever, makes it his best game ever in the regular season when you add the stakes and the stage. Christmas is the spotlight day. And on that stage, Nikola Jokic put up numbers we've never seen him put up before. He put up numbers in overtime that we've never seen another human being put up. And doing it to extend the win streak to 3 games over those pesky Wolves. I'll put that regular season performance from Nikola Jokic up against any that you want to bring in here. That is the best performance we have ever seen in a regular season game. Do want to be clear about that because I'm with David Adelman. Playoffs are a different story. Nuggets 3-0 now against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it's looking like not that the Nuggets will cruise to an inevitable matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Maybe it's an inevitable matchup with San Antonio. OKC's got to figure out the Spurs in the meantime. I think there's that kind of dynamic going on right now between San Antonio and OKC. I'm 100% sure San Antonio is not a better team than OKC. And it might be just Wemby, but there's something about that San Antonio team that OKC can't get around. It's very similar to what the Nuggets deal with the Wolves. Anthony Edwards is tremendous. The Nuggets are still pound for pound better than Minnesota. And I'm talking even before this year. But it's not a good matchup for him. It hadn't been a good matchup for him. But the Nuggets aren't going to cruise through the playoffs. The West is stacked. It's a gauntlet. The Nuggets are going to have to be at their best. And they were at their best in that overtime against the Minnesota Timberwolves. They might have to be that quite often in a series with the Minnesota Timberwolves in order to eliminate them. But the idea of the Wolves being this matchup nightmare or matchup problem or them having the Nuggets number, that's done now. The Nuggets will beat the Minnesota Timberwolves if they meet up for 7 games. And the reasons why are a part of one of the 3 biggest stories in Colorado sports in the year 2025, which I will get to right after this. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Monday, coming up this evening. Immediately following the Frank Serratori show, a special day of the Frank Serratori show because they got to go to Arizona. The Desert Classic coming up this weekend. So you get Frank Serratori's thoughts on that trip coming up at 6. And then at 7, it will be the Avs and the LA Kings. So stay here. Stay here all night. We got you covered. We got the new Westwood One Sports Network today. Hopefully you've enjoyed that, or if you haven't been able to consume this radio station throughout the day, highly recommend it. New and different. Some different voices on. Very cool. This show remains the same, and so does Dan Patrick. The tent poles of this radio station will continue into the year 2026. In fact, this show is expanding in its reach. Now, if you're listening or watching already, your day-to-day consumption of this show will not change. So, but just know there'll be more people being added to this community of ours, 2020 in the year 2026, which is coming up in just a few days. But a lot going on right now on this fine radio station, and I would think that you'd like to check some of it out. Oh, and Jim Rome hasn't gone anywhere. That's the other. The third, you need 3 tent poles, correct, to hold up a tent. I'm not an outdoorsman. So there's DP, there's me, and there's Jim Rome. We continue on, but some other things have changed around us. So check that out here on Extra Sports 1300. So in the meantime, 719-247-1313 is the number. If you would like to give your thoughts, kind of doing a couple of different things. Obviously, the sports are happening right now. Right? Broncos have a game coming up this weekend against the Chargers. The Avs and the Nuggets both in action tonight. So sports is continuing, but it also gives us a chance with no show the rest of the week to kind of look back at the year 2025. So doing a little bit of both here, accepting thoughts and comments on either. The theme of the 3 stories that are driving the show are the latter, as we look back in what my opinion, the 3 biggest stories in Colorado sports were in the year 2025. All right, and the biggest story of the year, I'm not much for counting down. Let's start with the number 1, shall we? It's what the Broncos just accomplished over the weekend.
We actually didn't even talk about it. And I don't know if that's something I should have or omitted. I haven't seen the hats or the shirts. My understanding is they're pretty ugly, and we just didn't really talk about it.
That audio courtesy of the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton all of a sudden dismissing something that he has stated as one of the biggest goals of his team, winning the AFC West. But that is typical Sean Payton. Sean Payton is always looking forward, always saying there's a bigger goal to accomplish, and if he can take a little bit of a dig at somebody else that he may be going up against at some point, in this case, the New England Patriots, who not only celebrated their division crown, they donned that gear that Sean Payton felt was so ugly. and they wore it proudly and have displayed it all over their social media. So right there in one clip, you get the essence of the biggest story of the year, which is the Denver Broncos, through Sean Payton's way, have climbed back atop the AFC West. He has done it with his players, especially his quarterback. The last guy was not his guy. He has done it while ruffling feathers, taking shots, disrespecting people that he should probably not be disrespecting, like one of his coaching colleagues or perhaps a quarterback of his. But it was very evident when Sean Payton came out of faux retirement and took this job. It became abundantly clear immediately that Sean Payton was going to do it his way. And his way is it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not passive aggressive. It's just aggressive, actively aggressive. It's taking digs. It's taking shots. It's not caring what obstacle stands in front of him. Oh, we're going to take on the most dead cap. Doesn't matter. Russell Wilson's terrible, and I can't go another minute with this guy as my quarterback. There are tantrums. There's him snapping. But, cue up the Frank Sinatra. This division that the Denver Broncos have won, Sean Payton has did it his way, every step of the way. And he's done it probably faster than anybody expected him to. I shouldn't say anybody, than most people expected him to, given where the Broncos not only were when he took over, but have been for a decade. And that is irrelevant, not in contention, and in the doldrums of the NFL. He has a way of doing it. He has a method to the madness. He brought that to Denver. The Walton Penner group stayed out of his way, wrote him a check whenever he wanted, and now they're sitting here as division champions, and that is an accomplishment. I don't care what the state of affairs is, because if you want to diminish the division title, fine. This Broncos team most likely will be the number one seed. It's not their division they just would have won. They would have won every division in the AFC. This is an accomplishment. Doesn't mean that Sean Payton's way of doing things is ultimately going to result in a Denver Broncos Super Bowl. Doesn't mean that at all. But this accomplishment seemed quite far-fetched, even at the beginning of this season. And Sean Payton has stayed true to his formula, his way of doing things, and it's worked. It's worked every step of the way here for the Denver Broncos. Not just this year, but in the previous two. Every step of the way, it's worked. There will come a time where it doesn't work. That time is not now, as the Denver Broncos are AFC champions, AFC West champions at West, AFC West champions, and looking to do that other thing here in a few weeks. As far as winning home field or getting home field, they were helped out a little bit today by Jim Harbaugh announcing Justin Herbert will not play on Sunday. This is the Broncos were able to get a playoff spot by beating Kansas City's JV, and now they're going to get home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs against the Chargers JV. Can't control it. It made all the sense in the world for the Chiefs not to care about Week 18 last year, and it makes all the sense that the Chargers aren't. And I guess it's the burden of, accomplishing your goals prior to Week 18. Right? Broncos took care of all their business. And the Chargers weren't able to, and now they have no chance of winning the division, so they're like, we'll get ready for the playoffs. I don't blame the Chargers. But the end of this year is going to be very familiar and very reminiscent of last year's. Let's go to what was the second story that was driving the show this year.
It's a bittersweet day, right? That Miko is a decorated player for us. He's an elite winger in this league, and so it was a tough few days, but we just felt the timing was right. And when the last few days, it kind of came together, and we decided to act yesterday, but it wasn't without a lot of serious thought. I can assure you of that.
That is Avalanche General Manager Chris McFarland speaking to the decision that was one of the more shocking decisions in Colorado sports history. It really was, to trade Mikko Rantanen, someone who had contributed in a big way to the Avs winning a Stanley Cup, to them being year in and year out one of the best teams in the NHL. There's no debate that Mikko Rantanen is one of the better wingers in the NHL, and yet the Avalanche traded him. And why? They traded him to become a deeper hockey team. Chris McFarland thought that the Avalanche were too top-heavy. This was not about Mikko Rantanen being not worth the money or anything like that. Yeah, there was probably a number where they would have kept him. But you don't make this kind of a decision just based on, Mikko Rantanen wants $14 million and we're only willing to give him 12. That was the convenient excuse. They wanted to make a significant shift in their organization. They wanted to do this. It's just the opportunity presented itself with the contract negotiations with Mikko Rantanen being at an impasse. If the Avalanche could have made other moves around Mikko Rantanen, they would have. Chris McFarland identified this is the only way that we are going to become a deeper hockey team, which is what he believes wins in the NHL. And the early returns were not great. I mean, certainly the Avalanche had a good year. The goalie changes certainly contributed to that. But for Mikko Rantanen to just end up right back in the Avalanche's way and almost single-handedly knocking them out of the Stanley Cup playoff, it put a lot of pressure on the Colorado Avalanche organization. And it put pressure on Chris McFarland. It turned the heat up a little bit. Because, he couldn't have foreseen Mikko Rantanen ending up in the Central Division against the Avalanche's chief rival. But among the possible outcomes, that was one of them. You don't plan on it, but it could happen. Now you go into this year. The Avs bring back everybody. They've signed Marty Necas. They've signed Brock Nelson. They got back Gabriel Landeskog. And this is a deeper team. And this is a team that, albeit during the regular season, has just been nearly unbeatable. Almost unbeatable in 60 minutes. Another example of that was Saturday. Down by 2 goals against a Vegas team who believes they are too a Stanley Cup champion. Down 2 goals to that team in Vegas, and the Avs still did not fall in 60 minutes of regulation. This is a team that has that win at all costs mentality that Gabriel Landeskog brings back, the no quit mentality. And then, oh, by the way, they are a deep team. They are a team that gets contributions from different guys every single night. Look at Sam Girard. Look at recently. Look at Sam Malinsky throughout this season. Chris McFarland, this trade only works, only is a success if the Avalanche hoist the Stanley Cup. There might be some wiggle room with the whole Sean Payton experiment in Denver as far as do they have to win a Super Bowl. The Avalanche, to make this work, have to win a Stanley Cup. Because they won one with Mikko Rantanen. They won one built the way they were built then. So the ultimate deciding factor of whether the Avalanche trading Mikko Rantanen was ultimately for the best, we still don't know that answer. And that's an answer that will not come in the year 2025. It will only be in the year 2026. But you can see the vision from Chris McFarland, can you not? You see the results here. And we'll find out when it really matters whether the Avalanche made the right call in trading Mikko Rantanen. Not dissimilar. The Denver Nuggets, the subject of story number 3.
You have a responsibility when you have a player like that, especially obviously in his prime. But you have, I feel, an even greater responsibility to the person.
Think about the year 2025 for the Denver Nuggets, and that is their governor, Josh Kroenke, talking about the responsibility to not waste Nikola Jokic's prime. Think about the moves they have made. In this calendar year, they have fired their general manager, their head coach, who is the most successful head coach in the history of the franchise, won a title just a couple of years ago. Those 2 guys gone. Followed up by probably the most significant trade that this team has made since they acquired Aaron Gordon, in trading Michael Porter to not only get Cam Johnson, but also open up the flexibility to be able to acquire Bruce Brown back, to bring in Tim Hardaway Jr., and most importantly, out of those 3, to bring in Jonas Valanciunas. Yeah, the Avalanche have remade their roster a little bit. The Denver Nuggets, you could argue, have undergone a larger transformation. And when I look at the year 2025 for the Nuggets, it was a year of reckoning. Right? Josh Kroenke finally putting his foot down and saying, we're not doing this anymore. We're not just saying having the best player in the world and we'll figure it out. And he made, I don't know if any move is more bold than trading Mikko Rantanen, but the amount of things that the Denver Nuggets have done as they realized that they were never going to win, they were going the wrong direction. I'll say that. The idea that they would never win another title, I can't say that with 100% confidence. They were continuing to trend in the wrong direction. And all the behind the scenes stuff between Malone and Booth and the general direction that Calvin Booth was leading this organization in the draft and develop. And the minute that the Denver Nuggets were able to do so, they got rid of all of that. Notice the Nuggets are not so much in the draft and develop. We still haven't seen Deron Holmes very much, have we? They added depth with veteran players. David Adelman's the head coach. Ben Tenzer, John Wallace leading the front office. But I still go back to one of the biggest reasons why the Denver Nuggets feel different this year. It's not the bench. It's not David Adelman as opposed to Michael Malone. It's not Tenzer and Wallace as opposed to Calvin Booth. It's this Jamal Murray. The Jamal Murray that is playing at an all-star level. That reckoning that came through the Nuggets organization, that reckoning of accountability, like, hey, are you doing all you can? We got the world's best player here. Are you doing all you can to maximize what we got in this guy? And Jamal Murray was one of the guys at the front of the line that could not answer yes. And all he has done is worked out all summer, started the season in shape. Has not missed hardly any time. And wouldn't you know it, the results are he's playing at an all-star level. And the Denver Nuggets continue to add. I think they're still on franchise best start. They play tonight against Miami. Actually, they tip off here in about 10 minutes. But all of this change and all the accountability and all of that kind of stuff, don't forget Jamal Murray. And don't forget how important he is, as maybe more important than who's leading the front office or who's the head coach or who's coming off the bench for Nikola Jokic. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories driving the year in Colorado sports. Also, take your thoughts on the present. No Justin Herbert on Sunday. Any worry that the Broncos will get home field advantage or will not get home field advantage? Drive Time Sports continues next. The Broncos are wearing the crown in the AFC West. Is that good enough? Is everything from here on out gravy? House money? Taking your thoughts at 719-24-7. 1313. Tom says Broncos making it to the AFC Championship would be a great step for them. The fact that they are the number one seed doesn't matter. But it does, though. Like, I'll do the champagne thing respectfully. It does matter. One, because I think they need it. Mike, we've talked about this defense starting to slow down, to taper off over the last few weeks, and certainly going against the Chiefs' third-string quarterback is not going to make you feel like, oh, they've completely turned it around, nor will be playing Trey Lance, unfortunately. But they need the bye week to recharge. They need home field advantage because, credit to Mile High, it's one of the most difficult places to play. So it matters that they have it for practical purposes. Because I don't think that the Denver Broncos would be able to take the long road as, a 7 seed and be able to make their way to the Super Bowl. But also, it very much does matter in terms of perception, because what that means if they clinch it on Sunday is that they are the best in the AFC. That's what that says. So if the Broncos lose to anybody between now and the Super Bowl, it will be deemed an upset, at least in terms of the seeding, which again says that the Broncos of all of these teams are the best. So the number one seed matters in multiple ways. And it also means that expectations for a good number of people have gone up. And I'm not against that. Things change. Right? And it's pressure is a privilege, as Joe Mazzulla and others have said. I just remember Joe Mazzulla talking about it most recently. But it's a credit to where Denver is right now that maybe just winning the division isn't good enough. Maybe being the number one seed and not making it to the Super Bowl is a disappointment. And it may mean that the Broncos failed to do what was possible, what should have been within their capacity, because they were the number one seed. So getting the number one seed matters a whole lot. Now, I think you could, maybe this sounds like having it both ways. I think you can acknowledge that the Broncos already, regardless of what happens now, have accomplished a great deal, have accomplished more than I or many people thought they were capable of accomplishing. And you bank that and you say that's an accomplishment. They did that. Credit to them. You could do that and also say that the Broncos losing at some point before they get to the Super Bowl is a disappointment. Or is the Broncos failing? Because they would be losing on their home field to a team with a worse seed than them. Now, the way I look at it is the demise of the Denver Broncos will come at the hands of a quarterback playing at an elite level. Like that's the thing that beats this Denver team. And by the way, that's the thing that beats a lot of NFL teams. The Denver Broncos are not unique in this. But that's why I keep going back to Buffalo. And I keep saying, as much as the Bills are just goofing off every 2 or 3 weeks, I still think when the playoffs roll around, you will get the best of Josh Allen and the best of this Buffalo Bills team. And maybe their best isn't good enough, especially on the defensive side of the football. But Josh Allen's best is good enough. We've seen it. Even in defeat, we can't look at the way Josh Allen performs and say that there's any fault that lies with him. If that Josh Allen plays in these playoffs, not the Josh Allen that you saw yesterday or have seen a couple of other times, but when Josh Allen is really locked in and playing at his best, I don't think that the Broncos compare to, say, the Chiefs teams that Buffalo has ran up against. And that's why I would take Buffalo. And I think Jacksonville has now entered the conversation. And I think New England is good. And I think Drake May, I have to see it. I can't buy into Drake May is just going to show up in his first playoff and light the world on fire. I can't say that. But is he capable of playing at elite level in a postseason game? I think he has that ability. Will he show that this year? So all of a sudden, you kind of recalibrate. It's not Lamar, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow. Right? That's not the group of quarterbacks. But if you look at Lawrence and you look at CJ Stroud, you say, well, we've seen it in spurts with these guys. Justin Herbert the same way. And then you have a Drake May who you think has the potential. So it's not the minefield that teams normally have to navigate in the AFC playoffs, the one that the Denver Broncos had to navigate last year where they stepped on the very first mine, and that was that for their playoff. It's different, and it may not be as good, but you look at some of these quarterbacks and you say maybe it's not just Josh Allen. Maybe it's a couple of these guys, 3 of these guys in the AFC that could mean the end to a Broncos playoff run. But at the same time, even if you like the quarterback that these teams have, there are other flaws. It's going to make these playoffs incredibly fascinating. And also, by the way, incredibly difficult to predict. I mean, really, I know week 18 still has to happen, but other than the Steelers and the Ravens game, there's not a whole lot on the AFC side going on. Right? We figure out, and you can even omit the Ravens and the Steelers from this conversation. Because I don't think that either one of those teams would be the answer to this question. Tell me who you really believe in. I mean, really and truly. And I don't want to talk in, like gambling or anything. Who would you bet your mortgage on? Don't do that. Don't ever do that. But just like, who do you trust in the AFC? Really and truly. Can you say that you trust the Denver Broncos implicitly above all others? But at the same time, can you say that you trust the Patriots who just got here? They just got good this year. Can you trust them? Can you trust a Texans team that is making a very late charge? And a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon, but how wary do you have to be of a team that has been a certain way for most of the season, and all of a sudden they start clicking at the very end, and we get caught up in recency bias, and now everybody's fawning over the Texans. And I think the Texans are a good team. But what Texans team can I trust? Who are the real Texans? In Jacksonville, I'm sorry, this isn't your fault, Trevor Lawrence or Liam Cohen or Travis Hunter or anybody on that team. You're the Jaguars. I don't think anybody's going to believe in you. Okay, it's too long. The history goes beyond the time you've been in Jacksonville. You can like Trevor Lawrence, you can love their defense in Jacksonville, but something about that organization, you're like, yeah, I don't know. Chargers, same way. Is that a logo that you can put your faith in? So I go back to an earlier point that I made, like the way that the Broncos have won all of these football games, and Christmas was another example of this. It doesn't get you to a point where you're like, oh, definitely the Broncos. But at the same time, don't they deserve credit for the fact that they play to their identity and they're able to replicate this blueprint, this recipe for success over and over and over again? And if I really thought about it, I would feel the same way about all of these teams. Now, they look different on a week-to-week basis than the Broncos do. But again, I'll use Buffalo as an example. Like there are some performances from Josh Allen where it's like he's more than a human but less than a god. Like there are performances where like, how is anybody in the AFC going to stop Josh Allen if Patrick Mahomes is unavailable? And then there are other games where he looks like he's goofing off the entire game. So can you trust the Bills? New England, I talked about the inexperience. Do you feel great about whoever comes out on top in the AFC North on Sunday? So like I can't give my full vote of confidence to the Denver Broncos, but at the same time, I don't know that I can do that 100% with anybody in the AFC. Meanwhile, in the NFC, I'm like, there's like 5 teams in the NFC who I think would dominate everyone in the AFC. It is right now, AFC, NFC, it is 2 different worlds. Did you watch that football game last night? It looked like a different sport than was being played on Christmas night. I'll take the 49ers certainly over the whole lot of them. I'll take the Bears over the whole lot of them in the AFC. And that's another team that just got good. But I look at Ben Johnson, and that was the big thing last night. Like the play calling from Ben Johnson and Kyle Shanahan, like that was, I mean, that was like 2 dueling swordsmen. I mean, I was just sitting back in awe of the play calling that Ben Johnson and Kyle Shanahan were pulling out last night. It was, but the NFC, it's a different world. The Rams, throw them into the mix. The Seahawks. I think you can say this if you're a fan of the Broncos or any team in the AFC. Thank goodness you're in the AFC, because none of these 7 teams in the AFC, I think, are really a match for about the top 4 or 5 teams in the NFC. One more break, come back and wrap up the show after this. Frank Serratori show coming up at the top of the hour. You may have seen the news story that applies on a local level that Colorado College has added a defenseman by the name of Mats Lindgren to their roster. And maybe you saw the headline. You're like, that's kind of weird. We're sitting here and it's December 29th and teams are adding players. Just that does not tell the whole story because Mats Lindgren played in the AHL, which is, and this is maybe not an apples to apples comparison, but it's pretty dang close. Basically, NHL's AAA. He played at that level. And now he is being granted eligibility to play college hockey. Something that I, following college sports for as long as I have, don't think that that has been the case this whole time. In fact, I remember a few times where the decision had to be made that you either, and baseball is always where I remember. Baseball is like, are you going to go pro in baseball or are you going to stay? Right? Drew Henson comes to mind. I think Jameis Winston. Not that Jameis was ever going to play baseball, but it always seemed like he came up with baseball. It's like, well, once you go, like the idea that if you walk through that door, you can't come back. And now they're coming back. They're coming back through a door that they were not previously able to come back through. And this is hardly the only example of this. The most high-profile example is a guy that I believe was included in the Luka Doncic trade that is playing at Baylor. He was included in the Luka trade. I have to double check. It was either the Luka trade or the Mark Williams trade. But he was included in an NBA trade, which they don't like deal in prospects like baseball does. You know what I mean? And even then, again, the minor leagues are supposed to be professional baseball. But that's the highest profile example of this. And by the way, I don't fault any team for it. You can't sit there and wag your finger at Colorado College or the Baylor or some of these other schools that are taking on these players. What are they supposed to say? No? For what? The betterment of sport? Like, if they're looking out for the betterment of the sport, they're the only people looking out for the betterment of the sport. Like, I don't blame them. This is an example of, and I'm going to sound incredibly old and uncool when I say this, don't hate the player, hate the game. The game is messed up. And the NCAA is just letting all of this happen. They're letting Diego Pavia play 10 years of college football. What, JUCO? Because all of a sudden JUCO years don't count. And they're letting this Najee guy go back to Baylor. And CC's picking up a reinforcement on the blue line. Like, this is wild. And this is, by the way, after, to stick with hockey, the idea that if players are playing in Canadian hockey, they can play in the NCAA. Another pool of players that previously you could not pull from. And I'm waiting for the tipping point. I'm waiting for the pendulum to swing back the other way, because college athletics has become the wild, wild west, and every day something else happens, and it's not that it's getting more contained, it's becoming wilder. So I'm still waiting. The pendulum just keeps going that way, and I'm waiting for it to swing back this way, and it's just not. It hasn't yet. And again, I don't blame the programs for doing these things. They ask an entity, which is the NCAA, and it is the NCAA's job to say no. But they have been rendered completely powerless and feckless by all of these, judges' rulings across the country, that it really seems like the NCAA right now is saying, like, approved. Like, I would like the ultimate experiment to be LeBron James retiring tomorrow and applying for NCAA eligibility. Like, I just want, part of me wants to see how far we can push this. LeBron never played college basketball. Never did. Under the NCAA, and with all of these decisions across the country made about eligibility that don't seem to make a ton of sense, or to seem to completely run counter to everything college athletics has been for my entire lifetime, let's just see how far it will go. Can LeBron go back to college? And I wish there was a, hey, here's Ryan's fix for the whole thing. Sorry, I don't have that for you. This is just one of those things of me remarking how crazier this is all getting. And nobody's stopping it. It's wild stuff. We'll end 2025 on that note, shall we? Oh, it's just sports. Relax. This will be my last show of 2025, but as I've mentioned, 2026, we got a lot of really big things planned. Our community is growing. So as an OG, as someone who has been a part of this show, with this show since day one, hold your head up high and brag at any opportunity you get in the year 2026 to say, I was there when Ryan was just on Extra Sports 1300. I will talk to you on Wednesday for Air Force women's basketball, but in this capacity, I will talk to you in 2026. Coming up next, the Frank Serratori Show on Extra Sports 1300.